Never mistake someone's proximity to you for permission to handle your destiny. That line alone sets the stage for what's happening right now, because the truth is this. Some people out there were walking around like they owned the VIP pass to your soul. They were promising access to you the way people promise front row seats to a concert they don't even have tickets for. And for a while, they got away with it, until karma pulled up like, "Excuse me, whose name were you selling again?" Here's a fact most people don't realize. Studies show that humans exaggerate their connection to valuable people or experiences by up to 80% when they feel insignificant. And you became the human embodiment of valuable. So naturally they inflated their role in your life, stretched the truth like old chewing gum, and told others they had access to you, as if your spirit was some neighborhood shortcut. But here's the twist that's making their stomachs drop. The same people they bragged to are now realizing they were lied to. They're watching you rise, evolve, glow, and transform in ways that no fabricated story can keep up with. Every part of your elevation is exposing every part of their exaggeration. Their credibility is shrinking faster than data on a bad network day. And the funniest part? They're acting shocked, as if heaven told them they were your manager, as if God signed off on their backstage pass fantasy, as if your destiny could ever be something they casually handed out like a flyer. Meanwhile, you're out here stepping into your anointing, quietly, powerfully, unbothered, while their karma is doing the heavy announcing for you. Because when someone tries to distribute access to a chosen one, the universe doesn't negotiate. It corrects, and it corrects loudly. This is the chapter where all the people who mishandled your name, misrepresented your spirit, and miscalculated your calling finally realize they weren't the gateway to your life. They were the blockage. And now that God has cleared the path, they're left explaining why the bridge they bragged about never existed in the first place. Buckle up, because what's happening next isn't just exposure. It's revelation layered with justice, wrapped in divine comedy, and flavored with a little bit of, "You really played yourself, didn't you?" Let's get into it. Number 1. They treated your existence like a commodity until they realized you were a divine asset, not a human resource. Some people handled you like your life was a marketplace and your presence was something they could bargain with. They spoke about you as if they owned stock in your destiny. They bragged about being close to you, being able to reach you, being able to influence you. They treated your existence like a product that they could promote, package, and present whenever it made them look important. It never crossed their mind that heaven doesn't hand out ownership rights to chosen ones. They didn't understand that your value was rooted in something they couldn't measure or control. You weren't someone they could use to impress others, even though they tried. They talked about you casually, almost carelessly, as if your energy, your loyalty, your kindness, and your presence were things they could access at will. They didn't respect the weight your soul carries. They didn't understand that your spirit doesn't run on public demand. It responds only to divine instruction. The more you grew, the more obvious the truth became. They thought they were dealing with an ordinary person, someone they could categorize and place on a shelf. But life has a way of revealing divine assets in stages. Your evolution exposed their ignorance. Every time you stepped into a higher version of yourself, it revealed another layer of how carelessly they handled you. And with that exposure came consequences. People started noticing the gap between how they talked about you and who you actually are. They claimed influence over you, but your growth made it clear they never had any. They positioned themselves as someone who could grant access to you. But now they're the ones standing outside the door, looking confused. What's hitting them hardest is the realization that they misjudged someone who carries spiritual worth. They treated your presence like something cheap and replaceable, but the universe is showing everyone that you were never the side feature. They were. They turned your existence into a prop for their ego, and now karma is reminding them that divine assets come with divine protection. Number 2, they promised people a version of you that didn't even exist, and that delusion has started imploding their relationships. They created a whole character based on who they needed you to be, not who you truly were. They spoke about you with confidence, describing behaviors you never displayed, attitudes you never had, and weaknesses you never carried. They painted a picture so far from reality that even they started believing it. Their version of you didn't come from truth. It came from their insecurities, their pride, and their desire to look like they had insight or authority over your life. They told people you were easy to influence, easy to manipulate, easy to reach. They acted like they were the insider, the one who understood you better than anyone else. But their storytelling became a liability the moment you evolved. Your growth didn't just expose the lies, it made their entire performance fall apart. People started seeing that the person they described simply didn't match the person standing before them. Relationships built on lies don't just fall apart quietly, they crack loudly, and that's exactly what's happening with them. The people they tried to impress are now questioning their credibility. They're replaying the stories they were told and comparing them to who you actually are. The gap between the lie and the truth is so wide that it's embarrassing for the one who created it. The irony is that they were never trying to attack your character, they were trying to boost theirs. They wanted to look like they had the inside scoop on you. They wanted to feel relevant by acting like they had some kind of privileged access. But all they did was expose their own illusions. The more you grow, the more their stories look ridiculous. Now their relationships are strained because people don't trust them anymore. When someone markets a false version of a chosen one, the universe doesn't wait long to expose the distortion. Their credibility is collapsing, and the truth they tried to hide is standing in full daylight. They built social connections on a fantasy, and now that fantasy is dissolving in front of everyone. Number 3, they thought proximity to you was something they controlled, not something God authorized. Some people genuinely believed they were the ones who allowed others to be close to you. They walked with the kind of confidence that made it seem like they granted permission, as if they were the gatekeepers of your life. They acted like you were in their orbit because they chose it, not understanding that your path, your connections, and your protection come from a higher place, one they have no control over. They got comfortable thinking their role in your life was permanent. They assumed that because they were around you during certain seasons, they were entitled to stay. They never paused to consider that your presence in their life was an assignment, not a possession. They misunderstood access as authority. They confused familiarity with ownership. They took a spiritual privilege and treated it like a personal benefit. The truth began to unfold when your elevation demanded separation. As you grew, the divine timing around your life shifted, and those who were never meant to stay were naturally removed. Suddenly, their confidence cracked. They realized they couldn't control who gets close to you, who gets removed, or who gets promoted in your life. They realized that the connection they bragged about wasn't theirs to maintain. What exposed them even more was how they reacted when new people entered your life. People with better intentions, cleaner hearts, and higher alignment. They became unsettled. They saw that God was connecting you with individuals they couldn't influence or block. And that's when it hit them. They never had any real power. They were temporary characters acting like permanent directors. Now they're watching your life unfold in ways they can't touch. Doors are opening for you that they didn't even know existed. Paths are clearing that have nothing to do with them. They're feeling the discomfort of realizing they weren't the ones who kept you protected. God was. They weren't the ones who decided who stays. They were simply given a seat for a season, and the season has changed. Number 4, they cashed in your name, before they understood the weight it carries, and now the bill has arrived. Your name traveled into rooms you never stepped into, not because you wanted it to, but because someone else was dragging it around like a discount voucher. They used it to boost their reputation, to sound connected, to seem important. They tossed your name into conversations the way people throw extra seasoning into a pot, recklessly, expecting it to make everything taste better for them. What they didn't realize is that your name isn't cheap seasoning. It's sacred. It carries history, battles, scars, divine backing, and spiritual authority. It carries weight they were never strong enough to lift. They spoke your name like it was theirs to control. They used it to gain access to people, opportunities, and social circles that had nothing to do with them. They didn't respect the fact that speaking on someone with spiritual covering requires caution. They bragged about knowing you, about influencing you, about having a say in what you do. They tried to use your name as currency for their ego. But spiritual currency doesn't work that way. You can't counterfeit divine association. You can't pretend proximity where there is none. And you definitely can't misuse the name of someone heaven protects without consequences. The moment people started meeting the real you, the truth hit like a slap they didn't see coming. Others realized quickly that the person they described wasn't the person they were connected to. The contrast exposed them. Every lie, every exaggeration, every attempt to inflate their own worth by placing your name in their mouth came crashing down, because truth never stays hidden for long. Now karma is sending invoices with their name on it. Their credibility is shrinking. Their connections are falling apart. Their stories aren't adding up. People are side-eyeing them because the energy they claimed you carried is not the energy you actually walk with. They spent your name carelessly, but you're the one who holds the spiritual copyright. And the universe doesn't play when someone treats a God-backed name like cheap advertising. The bill has arrived, and it's far heavier than they expected. Number 5. They sold access to you. Like a ticket, but forgot. God doesn't operate box offices. They walked around acting like they were the official distributor of you. They positioned themselves as the middleman, the connector, the one who could get people into your space like they were handing out tickets to some exclusive event. They bragged about being the person who could reach you, speak for you, influence you, or bring others close to you. The way they carried themselves, you'd think they ran a customer service desk for your life. They did all this without understanding one basic truth. Spiritual access is not something you can sell, trade, or negotiate. It's not a backstage pass. It's not a buy one, get one deal. You're not an event. You're not a transaction. You are someone whose life is governed by divine instruction, not human manipulation. They tried to turn your presence into a commodity, not knowing that God screens every soul that attempts to come near you. And now, the same people they were promising access to are seeing the truth unfold right in front of them. They're watching that self-appointed gatekeeper stand outside the very doors they bragged about opening. They're watching the person who pretended to be the connection lose access to you entirely. The irony is almost comedic. They spent so much time performing as the person who could get close to you, but your elevation has proven they were never truly close in the first place. People are beginning to notice that the ones they hyped up can't even reach you now. They're confused because they were told they had a route into your life, but what they actually had was a tour guide with no map. Every promise they made has now dissolved. Every boast they gave is collapsing. Every lie is showing its cracks. God never allowed them to be the distributor of your presence. They inserted themselves into a role that never belonged to them. And now, the shift in your life is revealing who was truly assigned and who just enjoyed pretending. The people they tried to impress are realizing the only ticket that mattered was one heaven issued, and they never had it. Number 6, their plan backfired. Because people only wanted them for their proximity to you, not for who they were. They walked around with a kind of inflated confidence, thinking they were the ones people admired, respected, or valued. They believed the attention they were getting was genuine. They thought they were finally being seen, finally being appreciated, finally getting the recognition they always wanted. But the truth behind that attention was far less flattering. People weren't drawn to them. They were drawn to the idea of you. Every conversation that mentioned your name made them feel important. Every time someone asked about you, they mistook it as interest in them. They didn't notice that people's eyes lit up, not when they spoke, but when they spoke about you. They were so focused on the attention that they missed the signs. People didn't want their personality, their company, or their wisdom. People wanted access to you, and they were simply the closest available route. Their ego built a fantasy around these interactions. They convinced themselves that the admiration was real. They thought they were finally being valued for who they were, not knowing they were playing a role they didn't qualify for, the accidental messenger. But reality always catches up, and when the truth hit, it hit fast and hard. When people realized the person bragging couldn't actually deliver what they promised, the interest vanished instantly. The ones who pretended to adore them suddenly became distant. The excitement, the friendliness, the curiosity, all gone. And that's when their ego collapsed. They had to face the fact that they were never the main attraction. They were never the one people wanted. They were simply the bridge that people hoped could lead them to you. And now that the bridge has collapsed, because your elevation, boundaries, and spiritual protection cut off every counterfeit route, everyone who was using them has walked away. The silence they're sitting in now is louder than any praise they once imagined. They're realizing the painful truth. All those people were never interested in who they were, only in who they claimed they could get to. And once that illusion evaporated, so did the crowd. Number 7. They didn't realize that lying about a chosen one amplifies karma tenfold. People often underestimate the spiritual weight of their actions, especially when it comes to speaking on someone whose life carries divine purpose. They treated lying about you like it was a casual act, something they could get away with, something the universe would overlook. They didn't realize that when they twisted your story, exaggerated your flaws, or painted you as something you weren't, they weren't just gossiping. They were interfering with a destiny they had no authority to touch. Lies about ordinary people already carry consequences, but lies about a chosen one hit a different level. They strike against a path that heaven is actively guiding. They disrupt a mission that has spiritual significance, and because of that, the karmic response comes with precision and speed. It's not revenge, it's correction. It's the universe making sure nothing and no one gets in the way of what God has orchestrated. They never expected the fallout to return to them so quickly. Every rumor they started, every misleading comment they made, every story they stretched beyond truth, each one became a spiritual debt with their name on it. They thought they were hurting your image, but they were actually damaging their own alignment. They didn't understand that heaven protects its investments, and you are one of them. Now the consequences are unfolding in ways they cannot explain. Their relationships are breaking down. Opportunities are slipping from their hands. People are distancing themselves from them without knowing why. Doors that were once open are shutting quietly and consistently. It's not because you wished anything on them. It's because the spiritual system they violated is correcting the imbalance they created. They broke more than social trust. They broke spiritual law. And spiritual law doesn't negotiate, doesn't forget, and doesn't need witnesses to take action. Their lies were meant to weaken your path, but instead they weakened their own. They tried to sabotage someone chosen, And now they're learning that the universe has a strict policy. What you project onto a protected soul comes back to you multiplied. Number 8, they spoke on your life without spiritual clearance, and the consequences hit their life first. There's a level of privacy that comes with being chosen. It's not about secrecy, it's about spiritual confidentiality. Your life is not an open book for just anyone to read aloud, interpret, or rewrite. But some people took it upon themselves to act like they were the official commentator on your journey. They spoke about your past, your pain, your choices, and your destiny as if they had the authority to do so. They narrated your life like it belonged to them, not realizing they were trespassing on sacred territory. They didn't understand that when they tried to define you, they were touching something heaven sealed. When they tried to explain you, they were meddling with a process they were never meant to understand. And when they tried to speak over your life, they were attempting to rewrite a script that wasn't divinely assigned to them. Every detail of your growth, every transition, every blessing, every setback, these were things God allowed you to live through, not them. So their commentary didn't just sound off, it was spiritually out of order. The consequences didn't waste time. Before any of their words had a chance to affect your life, the imbalance hit theirs. They started losing control of the things they once managed easily. Plans fell apart, opportunities dried up, relationships shifted. They found themselves confused, frustrated, and overwhelmed, not realizing they triggered it by stepping into a storyline that wasn't theirs to touch. The universe has a consistent pattern. Whoever tries to hijack a chosen one's narrative ends up losing control of their own. They thought they were exposing you, but they exposed themselves. They tried to redirect your path with their assumptions, but they derailed their own journey instead. Their attempts to manipulate your image only highlighted how unstable their own identity was. What they never understood is that your path is protected not by secrecy, but by purpose. And anyone who tries to speak over a purpose they don't carry pays a price. They attempted to handle your story without spiritual clearance, and now they're dealing with the reality of stepping into a role that was never theirs to play. They didn't lose control of their life because of you. They lost control because they tried to control what God assigned solely to you. Number 9. They promised people they could manage you, but you outgrew every version of control they tried to place on you. They seriously believed they had you figured out. They spoke with confidence, telling people they could handle you, calm you down, influence your decisions, or keep you in check. Their ego inflated because they thought your humility meant dependency. They mistook your patience for permission. They assumed your silence was a sign that you needed their guidance. In their mind, they were the stabilizer, the voice of reason, the one who had some kind of authority over your life. But what they didn't realize was that your spirit was changing at a speed they couldn't comprehend. While they were busy building a narrative around who you used to be, you were quietly stepping into a version of yourself that invalidated their entire storyline. You evolved emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and energetically, so deeply that their assumptions about you became outdated overnight. The person they described in their bragging sessions doesn't exist anymore. They promised people they could manage a version of you that life transformed out of existence. They built their importance around a version of you that healing, growth, and self-awareness dissolved. And that's where their embarrassment begins. Their narrative aged badly. Their confidence aged badly. Their performance aged badly. People are now noticing that nothing they said about you matches the person you've become. They can't keep up. They can't explain why they can't reach you the way they used to. They can't justify why their influence suddenly fell apart. And the people they bragged to are watching the truth unfold. You are uncontrollable, uncontainable, and unmanageable because your identity comes from God, not from the expectations of someone who never understood your purpose in the first place. Your growth exposed their small thinking. Your evolution revealed their lack of insight. Your transformation showed everyone that they were trying to manage someone who was never under their control to begin with. The authority they thought they had was nothing more than an illusion created by your old self. And since that old version no longer exists, their manufactured sense of power dissolved with it. They're embarrassed now because the truth is undeniable. You didn't rebel against their control. You simply outgrew a reality they were never qualified to speak over. Number 10, they used your name to gain relevance. And now, their relevance is declining because you've outpaced their entire identity. What they never understood is that your name carries spiritual weight, not social weight. Anyone can talk about you, but not everyone can handle the frequency your name vibrates on. They brought your name into rooms where your spirit did not authorize entry, thinking it would make them look informed, connected, or superior. But instead of elevation, it triggered exposure. Because here's the truth. People who attach themselves to a chosen one without alignment always get spiritually overdrafted. They spoke as if they had access to your inner chambers. They hinted at knowing you deeply. They implied they had insight, authority, or history that validated their opinion. But the moment you evolved, their entire narrative collapsed, because their relevance depended on a version of you that no longer exists. You outpaced them spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and energetically. And when you ascend faster than someone can update their story about you, they look outdated. Their words age like spoiled milk. Suddenly, they didn't realize that when someone's entire identity is built around your name, your growth becomes their downfall. Your evolution exposed how little they ever understood about you. Your elevation revealed how small their perspective always was. Your progress dried up the only source of clout they had, your existence. Because relevance built on another person's destiny is never sustainable. They were borrowing your light. They were freeloading off your journey. They were siphoning validation through proximity. But evolution disconnected the supply. Now the same people who once casually tossed your name into conversations. They avoid mentioning you entirely, because your success has made their previous claims look foolish. And the irony? The more irrelevant they become, the more obvious it is that you were always the source of the attention they pretended to own. They didn't lose relevance because you changed. They lost relevance because you grew into a version of yourself they could no longer lie about. Number 11, they told people you were easily accessible. Now those same people are finding out you're spiritually fortified. They acted like your life was a public park and anyone could stroll in whenever they wanted. They promised others that reaching you was simple, that getting close to you was a matter of effort, charm, or persistence. They made it sound like you had no walls, no discernment, no protection, like your energy could be harvested by anyone with the right words or connections. And for a while, some people believed them. What they didn't realize is that your evolution was quietly happening behind the scenes. Your aura shifted. The energy around you grew denser, sharper, unyielding. Your discernment became flawless. You could detect intentions before they were spoken. Your boundaries solidified into something untouchable. People who once thought they could casually walk into your life now find themselves stopped at a gate they cannot open. They're facing a force they never accounted for, a spiritual fortification that cannot be bypassed by lies, charm, or ego. Those who were promised access are now the first to notice the change. They expected ease and familiarity, but what they found is discernment, wisdom, and divine protection. They are confused, they are disappointed, they are frustrated. The person they were told they could reach effortlessly has transformed into someone unapproachable by human design and divine decree. The gate they assumed would always be open is closed, and they are left standing outside, confronted with their own miscalculations. The irony is piercing. The very people who sold the illusion of access are now being questioned by those they misled. Their credibility is crumbling because the reality of your spiritual fortification exposes their dishonesty. Their promises of closeness reveal their lack of understanding about who you truly are. You didn't have to lift a finger to enforce this boundary. You simply became who you were always meant to be. The protection around you is automatic, natural, and unstoppable. Those who once laughed, boasted, and manipulated in your name are now the ones who experience the consequences firsthand. Your evolution didn't just block them, it exposed their greed, their false confidence, and their audacity. The gate is now clearly yours, guarded by divine authority, and no one gets through without alignment. Number 12. They wanted to benefit from your light, without respecting the shadow work that produced it. They were drawn to your shine like it was a free resource, something they could tap into whenever their own life felt dim or unsteady. They admired your glow, your strength, your clarity, your confidence, but they never stopped to consider the cost behind it. They wanted to warm themselves by your fire without asking who built it, what it consumed, and how many nights you had to sit alone in the cold before the flame finally rose. Your light looked effortless to them. It looked natural. It looked inherited, like something you were simply born with. But the truth is, you earned every inch of illumination through battles that would have swallowed them whole. Your glow came from wounds you stitched up yourself, prayers you whispered through tears, nights where sleep felt like a luxury, and days where you held your spirit together with nothing but grit and faith. They wanted to stand beside you for the benefits, not the growth. They wanted your wisdom without the lessons, your elevation without the sacrifices, your presence without the depth. They didn't want to acknowledge the shadow work, the self-confrontation, the healing, the emotional excavation that built the version of you everyone now admires. They loved the result, but disrespected the process. But here's the twist. People are starting to notice. They're beginning to see the difference between someone who earned their glow and someone who tried to borrow it. The ones who mocked your struggle, laughed at your healing journey, or pretended your battles were exaggerated are now being exposed. They can't handle even a fraction of what shaped you. Their lives are revealing the truth your humility never said out loud. The strength they tried to imitate was forged in a kind of pressure they were never built to withstand. They didn't realize your shadow work was the blueprint for your power. They didn't understand that your light isn't for sale, for show, or for shortcuts. Now the glow they tried to benefit from is standing as a mirror, reflecting their lack of depth, their unhealed layers, and the shortcuts they hoped to take through your presence. And suddenly, the version of you they underestimated is the very reminder of everything they ran from in themselves. Number 13. They treated your destiny like a social event. Now they're watching you step into spaces they'll never be invited to. They thought your destiny was something they could casually talk about, pass around, and offer to people like it was an event happening next weekend. They acted like your future was a party they were hosting, as if they had the authority to decide who could show up, who could sit in the front row, and who could benefit from your rise. They handled something sacred with the kind of carelessness people use when they're trying to feel important by association. But destiny doesn't answer to human agendas. It doesn't bow to manipulation, ego, or people-pleasing. Destiny recognizes alignment, purity, intention, and character, qualities they never carried but were hoping to borrow through you. They made your journey into entertainment. They bragged about the rooms you'd enter as if they'd be standing beside you. They made promises to people about opportunities that were never theirs to distribute. They spoke about your elevation with entitlement, calling it we, us, and our win, never realizing how wildly out of place they truly were in the story. Now the shift is exposing every illusion they created. You're stepping into environments they cannot intellectually navigate, emotionally survive, or spiritually qualify for. You're walking into rooms where access is not something you buy or charm your way into. It's something you become through growth, integrity, and internal work. These aren't rooms built on noise. They're rooms built on alignment. They're not social gatherings. They're divine assignments. And the people they hyped up, the ones they promised would get to you, stand with you, or benefit from you, those people never even made it to the lobby. They were expecting to be ushered in through someone else's arrogance, not realizing God doesn't accept +1s that weren't invited. The elevation you're entering requires authenticity, not attachment. Now the ones who treated your destiny like casual conversation are forced to watch from the outside as you rise into spaces their spirit was never prepared for. They'll see you move into levels they can't comprehend and realize, too late, that destiny was never their playground. It was your covenant, and they were only ever spectators pretending to be participants. Number 14. They didn't know you were anointed, but now their consequences are preaching the sermon. They tried to silence. They thought your life was ordinary. They thought your story was just another storyline they could twist, mock, or casually narrate. They didn't recognize the oil on your life, the covering over your path, or the spiritual authority woven into your journey. They treated you like someone they could play with publicly and disrespect privately, never realizing that mishandling you was a direct violation of a divine order they couldn't see, but are now being forced to feel. What they didn't understand then is what life is teaching them now. Your elevation speaks louder than any defense you could ever give. Every blessing you step into is exposing the truth they tried to bury. The doors opening for you are dismantling every lie they whispered in the dark. Your growth is convicting them more than any confrontation ever could. The transformation they tried to downplay is now towering over their attempts to silence your purpose. Meanwhile, their consequences are turning into the very sermon they didn't want preached. The setbacks hitting their life are revealing everything they thought they hid. The opportunities slipping from their hands are reminding them of the spiritual boundary they crossed. The relationships falling apart, the plans that won't hold, the confusion surrounding them. It's all a living, breathing announcement that they touched someone they were never spiritually authorized to touch. They didn't need to believe in your anointing. They didn't need to respect your calling. They didn't have to acknowledge your purpose. Life is doing the talking now. Karma is doing the explaining. Divine justice is doing the revealing. Every closed door in their life is echoing one message: you mishandled someone heaven protects. And now the truth is undeniable. They promised access to someone who was never theirs to offer. They tried to usher people toward a soul heaven has quarantined from the unworthy. They thought they were gatekeepers, but all they did was expose themselves as intruders. Your divine protection is loud, your elevation is louder, and their consequences are the loudest of all. Conclusion. Every single point we've covered reveals one undeniable truth. The people who tried to manipulate, misrepresent, or exploit you underestimated the power of a life that carries divine purpose. They treated your existence, your energy, and your destiny like something negotiable, something they could control, and something they could distribute for their own benefit. They promised access to others, they boasted about influence they never had, and they sold illusions that were never theirs to sell. And yet, none of it worked. Your growth, your elevation, and your anointing have exposed every lie, every exaggeration, and every miscalculation. Those who sought to benefit from your light without earning it are now forced to watch from the sidelines as your life moves into spaces they cannot enter, as your name carries weight they cannot touch, and as your destiny unfolds in ways their ego never anticipated. Every attempt to control you has backfired. Every lie has returned to them amplified. Every door they thought they opened has closed. Every story they tried to rewrite has been overwritten by truth. The universe has a way of honoring those who endure, who heal, and who remain authentic in the face of manipulation. You didn't just survive their schemes, you rose above them. You didn't just navigate their false promises, you transcended them. You didn't just protect your energy, you fortified it in ways that now make them question their every step. And the most powerful part? They see it, they feel it, and their consequences are the living testimony of what happens when someone tries to play with a soul under divine protection. This is your moment. This is your vindication. Your story is no longer theirs to control, and your light is untouchable. The people who thought they could influence you have now been exposed, not by force or confrontation, but by the unstoppable truth of your evolution. You are a living reminder that integrity, purpose, and divine alignment cannot be borrowed, sold, or manipulated. They can only be lived. If this message resonated with you, don't just scroll past. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss these deep truths. Like the video to support the content that uplifts your spiritual awareness. Comment below to share your own experiences or breakthroughs, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. The universe is aligning for those who are ready, and your presence here means you are one of them. Stay aware, stay elevated, and keep stepping into the life that only you were designed to live. God bless you.